The fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room buzzed overhead as Marcus Chen sat with his head in his hands, his work uniform still damp with rain and someone else's blood. His phone vibrated for the 14th time. His boss again. He knew what this meant. He knew that walking through those office doors tomorrow would likely be walking toward unemployment. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was that woman's face, pale and frightened, clutching her swollen belly as she collapsed on the sidewalk in the pouring rain. Some choices don't feel like choices at all. They feel like the only human thing to do. Marcus had been a single father for 3 years, ever since his wife Sarah passed away from cancer, leaving him alone with their 6-year-old daughter, Emma. Every morning was a carefully choreographed dance of breakfast, preparation, lunch packing, hair braiding, and the mad dash to drop Emma at school before racing across town to his data entry job at Fisher & Associates. He was never early, but he was never late. Not once in 3 years. His record was perfect because it had to be. There was no safety net, no backup plan, no wealthy relatives to call when things got tough. There was just him, Emma, and the paycheck that kept a roof over their heads. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Emma had insisted on wearing her princess costume to school, and Marcus had negotiated her down to a tiara with her regular clothes. They were running on schedule, maybe even a few minutes ahead, when he dropped her off with a kiss on the forehead and her favorite reminder, "Be kind, be brave, be you." He was 3 blocks from the office when he saw her. The woman was maybe 30, heavily pregnant, struggling with grocery bags as the sky opened up in a torrential downpour. She wore a business suit that looked expensive, but was now soaked through. As Marcus watched, she stumbled on the curb and the bags went flying. Apples rolled into the street. She tried to bend down to gather them, lost her balance and went down hard on the concrete. Marcus didn't think. He yanked his car to the curb, hazard lights flashing, and ran to her side. She was conscious but clearly in pain, one hand protectively cradling her belly, the other scraped and bleeding from catching her fall. "Don't move," Marcus said gently, kneeling beside her in the rain. "Let me help you. Are you hurt? Is the baby okay?" Her face was twisted with pain and fear. "I don't know. I don't know. I felt something when I fell. Please, I'm only 7 months. It's too early." Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed 911, then shrugged off his jacket to drape over her, trying to keep the rain from her face. Other pedestrians hurried past, umbrellas tilted against the downpour, eyes averted. The city had taught them not to see, not to stop, not to get involved. But Marcus had never learned that lesson. The ambulance took 12 minutes to arrive. Marcus stayed the entire time kneeling in the puddles, holding the woman's hand as she cried and worried aloud about her baby. She told him her name was Catherine, that this was her first child, that she'd been on her way to a meeting when she'd decided to grab groceries. Such a stupid decision. Why had she done that? What if something happened to the baby? "You're going to be okay," Marcus kept telling her, with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "You did the right thing stopping for groceries. You're taking care of yourself and the baby. This isn't your fault." When the paramedics arrived, Catherine grabbed his hand tighter. "Please don't leave me. I don't want to be alone." Marcus thought of Emma, of his job, of his boss, Mr. Fisher, who had made it crystal clear that the new efficiency standards meant 0 tolerance for tardiness. He thought of the stack of bills on his kitchen counter, and the fact that Emma needed new shoes because her toes were cramping in the old ones. Then he looked at Catherine's frightened face and squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." He rode in the ambulance, called Catherine's emergency contact, her sister, who was 2 states away, and stayed in the waiting room as doctors examined her. He missed the entire morning at work. His phone rang and rang until the battery died. When Catherine's husband finally burst through the hospital doors, wild-eyed and terrified after catching an emergency flight from Chicago, Marcus was finally able to slip away. It was past 2 in the afternoon when he arrived at Fisher & Associates. His clothes were still damp, his shoes squelched with every step, and he walked straight into a storm far worse than the one outside. Mr. Fisher called him into the office immediately. Marcus had worked at the company for 3 years and had rarely, exchanged more than basic pleasantries with the stern, silver-haired man who owned the firm. Fisher had a reputation for being brilliant, demanding and utterly inflexible. "Mr. Chen, your employment here is terminated effective immediately," Fisher said before Marcus could even sit down. "Clear out your desk. Security will escort you out." "Sir, I can explain." "There is no explanation that justifies a complete no-call, no-show. We have standards, Mr. Chen, standards that everyone must meet." Marcus felt the words stick in his throat. He thought about defending himself, about explaining what happened, but the look on Fisher's face told him it wouldn't matter. He simply nodded, turned, and walked to his desk in a daze. His co-workers avoided eye contact as he packed his few personal items into a box. A photo of Emma, a coffee mug she'd painted for Father's Day, a small plant that had somehow survived 3 years of fluorescent lighting. Security waited by the elevator, professional and impersonal. The ride down felt like falling. Marcus sat in his car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, trying to figure out how to tell Emma that everything was going to be okay when he had no idea if that was true. His emergency savings might cover 2 weeks, maybe 3 if they ate nothing but rice and beans. He'd need to find another job immediately, but data entry positions didn't grow on trees. And without a reference from Fisher, he picked Emma up from school wearing a smile he didn't feel. She chatted about her day, about the drawing she'd made, about how Tommy had shared his cookies at lunch. Marcus made encouraging sounds and mentally calculated how long he could keep up her after-school art class before he'd have to cut it. That night, after tucking Emma into bed, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, searching job boards until his eyes burned. Every application felt like throwing a message in a bottle into an endless ocean. 3 days passed, then 4. Marcus heard nothing but automated rejection emails. He started looking at positions that paid less, required longer commutes, offered no benefits. He looked at night shift work, weekend work, anything. Emma noticed something was wrong despite his best efforts to hide it. "Are you sad, Daddy?" she asked one evening, crawling into his lap. "Just a little tired, sweetheart." "Is it because of Mommy?" Marcus hugged her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Mommy would want us to be happy, and we will be. I promise." It was a promise he desperately hoped he could keep. On the 8th day, Marcus received an email that made him blink in confusion. It was from someone named Jennifer Torres, executive assistant to the CEO of Meridian Holdings. The message requested his presence at their downtown headquarters the following morning for a meeting. It provided no other context. Marcus had never heard of Meridian Holdings. He certainly hadn't applied for any positions there. His first thought was that it was a scam, but when he researched the company, his confusion deepened. Meridian Holdings was a massive corporation with interests in real estate, technology, healthcare, and dozens of other sectors. Their CEO was listed as Catherine Meridian Hartley. The name sparked something in his memory. Catherine? Could it be? The next morning, Marcus put on his only good suit, dropped Emma at school, and made his way to the gleaming glass tower that housed Meridian Holdings. The lobby alone was more impressive than any building he'd ever worked in. He gave his name at the desk, half expecting to be turned away, but instead was immediately escorted to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking the city, and there, standing by those windows with one hand resting on her pregnant belly, was Catherine. "Marcus," she said, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Thank you for coming." "Catherine, I don't. What is this?" She gestured for him to sit, settling herself carefully into a chair across from him. "I've been trying to find you for over a week. You left the hospital before I could thank you properly, and you turned off your phone. It took some detective work, but we finally tracked you down through the ambulance records." Marcus shook his head, still trying to process. "You're Catherine Meridian, as in Meridian Holdings." "Guilty," she said with a slight smile. "4th generation, actually. My great-grandfather started with a single factory. Now we employ about 40,000 people worldwide." She paused, her expression growing serious. including until recently Fisher and Associates. We acquired them as part of a larger portfolio about 5 years ago. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You own the company that fired me. I own the parent company, yes. And when I heard what happened, I was furious. Catherine leaned forward. Marcus, you saved my baby's life. Maybe mine too. When I fell, I'd partially detached my placenta. If I'd tried to get up, if I'd been alone, if you hadn't gotten me help so quickly. The doctors said minutes mattered. I'm glad you're both okay, Marcus said quietly. But you didn't need to track me down. I would have done the same for anyone. I know you would have. That's exactly the point. Catherine pulled out a folder from her desk. I've spent the last week learning everything I can about you. Marcus Chen. Single father, spotless work record, consistently positive performance. Reviews despite being relegated to entry-level work far below your capabilities. You have a degree in business administration, but you've been doing data entry for 3 years because the hours were stable and let you care for your daughter. Marcus felt exposed, vulnerable. I do what I have to do. No, Catherine said firmly. You do what's right. There's a difference. She slid the folder across to him. I'm offering you a position as Director of Community Relations at Meridian Holdings. Your job would be to oversee our charitable initiatives, employee welfare programs, and community outreach. The salary is here, along with full benefits, college fund contribution for Emma, and flexible hours so you can be there for your daughter. Marcus opened the folder with shaking hands. The number he saw made his breath catch. It was more than triple what he'd been making at Fisher and Associates. I can't accept this, he said, though his heart was screaming at him to grab the opportunity with both hands. This is too much. I don't deserve this for just helping someone. Catherine's eyes grew fierce. You deserve this because you're exactly the kind of person we need making decisions at this company. Do you know how many people walked past me that day? Dozens, maybe hundreds. But you stopped. You stayed. You held my hand while I was terrified and made me believe everything would be okay. Her voice cracked slightly. My daughter is going to be born in 2 months, Marcus. She's going to grow up in a world that desperately needs more people like you. People who stop. People who help. People who choose kindness even when it costs them everything. Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. I didn't know what else to do. Exactly. It wasn't even a choice for you. It was just who you are. Catherine stood, extending her hand. So please let me give you this. Not as charity, but because you've earned it. Because I believe you'll take this position and use it to help countless other people. And because every time I look at my daughter, I want to remember that there are still good people in the world. Marcus thought about Emma, about the bills on his counter, about the fear that had kept him awake every night for the past week. But mostly he thought about the look on Catherine's face as she'd lain on that wet sidewalk, frightened and alone, and how the only choice had been to help. He shook her hand. When do I start? Catherine smiled, the kind of smile that suggested everything was about to change. How about Monday? That evening, Marcus picked Emma up from school and took her for ice cream, a luxury they hadn't had in months. As she demolished a chocolate sundae, getting more of it on her face than in her mouth, Marcus watched her and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Daddy, you're smiling, Emma observed, peering at him with chocolate-covered curiosity. I am, sweetheart. You know why? Why? Because I learned something important this week. Sometimes when you help other people, you end up helping yourself too. And the best part is, that's not why you do it. You do it because it's right. Emma considered this seriously, as only a 6-year-old can. Like when I shared my crayons with Mia because she forgot hers. Exactly like that. Did you share your crayons, Daddy? Marcus laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuine joy. Something like that, baby. Something like that. Outside, rain began to fall again, but this time Marcus didn't mind. He knew that sometimes storms bring more than just rain. Sometimes they bring the moments that change everything. The chances to prove who you really are, the unexpected kindness that ripples out in ways you can never predict. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is stop, help, and trust that the universe is keeping score in ways you never imagined. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing leads you exactly where you were always meant to be.